at the forum on Friday. How many of you were at the forum on Friday?
No.
No? Okay.
I was.
Was any, let's do, I know B was anyone else at the forum? Okay, there was a lot of good information shared, and I'll just give you some of the highlights just to keep you up to date. From risk management, with regard to open houses, the investigators are doing spot checks, and they're serious about this. So make sure you really follow the COVID guidelines, because you know, we don't want our office to be cited, and they will fine you. You know, someone in our office was accused of not following protocol, and I know he did the best that he could, you know, but people were getting out of their cars, they weren't social distancing, and a broker called me and he says, you know, I'm not going to turn him in, but, you know, just want you to know what's going on out there. So be very, very careful, especially now, you know, with the spikes and everything. You want to be sure that you're following protocol and that everyone is staying safe. I mean, that's the main reason. We want to keep everyone safe, and hope you and your families are safe, by the way. So some open houses are actually requiring appointments. However, if you're going to post an open house, it's a little difficult with folks who don't have realtors. So be sure to, you know, let them know that you are following guidelines, and that's why you have to, you know, ask them to wait or whatever. And of course, we want to be as courteous as possible. I had someone leave one of my open houses, you know, they didn't have a realtor with them. They left because they didn't want to wait. And we want to make sure we give everyone an opportunity to get in and get out. So be mindful of that. Does everyone know that Zillow is becoming
The ones that were like,
what? Sorry. Hello. Did someone want to say
I think
something?
I think it was just somebody who just was muting themselves when they got on.
Okay, Nicole, is everyone muted or not? I see some are and some aren't.
When people first get on, they may not be muted, and then they mute themselves, or I mute them.
Okay, so we'll definitely have a chance for question and answers later. So it's up to you if you want to mute now, or you know, just go on and ask them as we go along. Okay, so does everyone know that Zillow is becoming a brokerage? That was shocking news, but you know, progression, I guess. Fair housing, there was an article, something happened in Westerly, and this was awful, this discrimination case, whereas the listing agent sold the house, you know, there was a buyer's agent involved. And again, when I say agent, we know we don't call them agents anymore, but I just go back to when I first started, we call them agents. So we know that it's either practitioners or licensees, but you know, for purposes of today, we're going to call them agents. So the listing agent, the selling agent went to the listing agent with a buyer, very qualified buyer. And the sellers asked, when they looked at the name, is this person of color? And the listing agent said, yes. And she said, and they said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that to my neighbors. And touche to the listing agent, because the listing agent said, I'm sorry, I can't represent you in this transaction. That's discrimination. It's you know, breaking my fair housing rules, ethics, everything else. I'm sorry, I can't represent you. So I just want to send kudos out to that agent, and also remind you, and I know that all of you practice this way, but we cannot discriminate in any way, any of the protected classes. So be careful of that, because leading to my next point, and there was a change of the code of ethics. I believe it was Article 10. Guys, you can't take your realtor hats off at night. So when you're representing someone, or you're representing realtors, you can't, for example, be a realtor by day and a KKK member by night. It goes against our code of ethics, and nor should we be doing that. But you can't do that. You could be fined, and you could even be in danger of losing your license. So be mindful. Someone posted a terrible, terrible post on Facebook. The guy had a gun, And he said, you know, I'm coming for you. Excuse me. I'm waiting for you, mother effer, and, you know, bring it on. That behavior is totally, totally unacceptable. And I know that no one in our office does that. I believe that we have professional agents in our office, but be mindful of what you post and what you do in the office. You know, we want to create a professional atmosphere. We want to create a safe atmosphere for everyone who comes into that office, whether it's another agent or a client. So be really mindful of that. And I know you're probably scratching your head saying, gee, I don't do that, or I don't act like that. Unfortunately, there are people out there. And if you are working with someone or you're just talking with another agent, you know, don't be afraid to speak up and say, hey, listen, that's discriminatory. And I don't practice that way. Is everyone in agreement with that? Or does anyone want to share anything on that?
I'd like to share something.
Okay, hi, Joe.
Hi, how are you? Walk to water. That is very discriminatory because if you're
Yes.
handicapped, you can't walk to water.
Mhm, mhm.
I see it in write-ups all the time.
Yeah, and we're not supposed to, you know, years ago, we couldn't even have that as a choice in the MLS, but it seems like it's come back. So yes, walk to water. It's discriminatory. Not everyone can walk. You know, use phrases like close to the water, very close to the water, water views, things like that. Thank you. Thanks for that, Joe. Anyone else?
You can also say, Lynn, it's Pat. You can
Hi,
say,
Pat.
I mean, I've had waterfront, close to water properties, and I've walked it myself. And you
Yeah.
can say so many steps to the water.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Well,
know?
I don't know about steps.
No?
No,
How
because
about feet? How about feet? So many
feet
feet
is
from the water.
fine. Feet is
Yeah.
fine. Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine. As long as, you know, unfortunately, people don't think about other people when they're listing or when they're selling, you know, and some of the older agents like myself, we want to use the old phrases. It's out with the old, in with the new, you know. Everyone is protected and should be respected, right?
Well, walk to water, going back to that, that's even a thing in the listing you could check off.
I know.
Sure.
Is that Joe?
Yeah,
Hi, Joe. Yes, it is. And like I was just saying, they took that out for a while and it seems to be back in. And I will notify MLS.
I mean, yeah. The heck, if they're gonna bust our chops, why offer it? But
Mhm, mhm. I'll get them today. All right. So remember, you can't take your hat off. Respect in the office. Language, keep your language down, you know. You want people to look at, you know, other practitioners, when they look in MLS and they see the listing sheet and they say, oh, that's Joe. Oh, that's great. I know I'm going to have a smooth transaction. I know that they're going to respect me and everything is going to, I mean, I can't guarantee that everything is going to go fine, but you know what I'm saying? You do it yourself now. And I do it when I look and I say, oh, that's Mindy Lane. Oh, she's great. I know I'm going to have a great transaction. You want to be the person on the other end. So, you know, let that be our goal, that our office is set apart and known as an office that, you know, practices well and respects everyone. Right? Can we all agree on that? It's so funny. I wish we were all in one room because a lot of your faces I can't see. But let's just keep that in mind. Okay. All right. Again, leave out protected classes, which are, oh, and I want to talk to you about something else. Speaking of protected classes, leave out, when you write the love letter, now everyone knows what the love letter is. How many of you use the love letter? Nicole, can you unmute everyone? Or
I have, even though it doesn't work even so. But I do
I
it.
think
You know.
Nicole has to do it.
No.
Okay. How many of you have or use the love letters on a regular basis?
I used one with Pat Oliver last year.
Mhm.
My daughter was buying a house and she described her love of the tree that was in the yard.
That's perfect.
Pat,
And
am
it
I right?
worked. and
worked.
it worked.
Yes.
When my seller heard about the tree, which she did not even tell me was special, that was it, seal the deal.
Okay. And they do work sometimes, but you have to be very cautious. Again, protected classes. You don't want to say anything like family neighborhood or, we go to the same church as you or, whatever, ethnicity, anything in those love letters. You want to say phrases like, I'm an avid gardener and I just love what you've done with the perennials in the backyard, or, just leave out any of the protected classes. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're doing that. And never, ever, ever put a picture, because obviously that shows your ethnicity. And again, we want to leave all that out. Just be straightforward. I love the house. The stairway is beautiful. The finished basement, gives me just enough space for whatever. I'm a carpenter and, things like that. Keep those out and be very careful, please, because that goes against our code of ethics. And lastly, with regard to risk management, I want to talk about surveillance, recording, audio and visual. Be careful and always, always assume that you are being recorded. With today's day and age with Alexa and everything else, they can just pop right in and hear what you're saying. And we know that there are video cameras, as big as the size of a pinhead. So be mindful of that. And of course, you want to be respectful anyway. You don't want to say anything disparaging about the seller's property, but always make that assumption. We are working on ways now at risk management to see, how we can inform sellers and buyers. What I do is I'll put a little tent up saying that, there is video and audio equipment in use. Whatever you choose to do, just disclose, disclose, disclose. Okay, and I know a lot of you do that. Does anyone else have any ideas of what they do to disclose that and how they educate their buyers and sellers? And by the way, this is interactive today. So feel free to share your opinions.
Have the conversations out of the house.
You have the conversations out of the house, but
Yeah.
what about when you're touring the house?
Well, don't have those conversations inside the house.
Okay.
I
that's-
agree with you, Joe. Yeah, I tell the buyers before we get in, we're not going to talk about the house while we're in there.
Okay, good. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, again, make the assumption and disclose. All right, anyone have any questions on any of this? Okay, good. Let's move.
Lynn, I did want to just say one thing. I've been taking a lot of training classes in Bold and all of that. And I'll tell you, they've been talking about doing pictures with those letters a lot. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but the
Okay,
code of
yeah.
ethics just recently changed.
Okay, all
All
right.
right, and do
Yep,
not.
good
send
to
that
know.
Because then, again, it reveals the ethnicity.
Yeah, good to
Yeah.
know.
Okay. All right, Nicole, do you want to put up the new purchase and sales agreement? Let's put up the one with the blue markings first.
Okay. I think that I only have the one that you had sent me today.
I sent you one with markings in blue.
Okay, I can put that one up.
Yeah, let's put that one up first.
All right, hold on
Has
one second
everyone
while I
had a
pull it
chance
up.
to review the new P&S?
Not yet.
Okay.
I did a class on it yesterday, Lynn, with my newer agent. So I do
Yeah.
have a couple of questions. So I'm excited for this time.
Okay, good. Here we go. All right, we'll take it right from the top. And I just want to say that the reason for the changes is obviously over the years. And do I have any new agents on? Any newer agents, a year or less? Okay, all seasoned agents? Good.
Well, I'm new.
All right. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. Welcome and congratulations.
No, thank you.
Okay.
I'm new,
Hi, who's that?
Lauren Serio. Hi,
Oh,
Lynn.
hey, Lauren. How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good, good. All right. So like I said, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
So this isn't going to be much of a switch for you, but for you older agents, in tenure, not in age. Just want to let you know, we tried to make this a very balanced purchase and sales agreement, as we do with all the forms. And by the way, our recommendations come from folks like you who use the forms. You know, we're a group of about 12, and sometimes the forms are changed because of recommendations that we receive from the membership. So if you have anything, any of the forms that you're working with, and you want to make a recommendation, you know, please see me. I'm happy to pass those along. And, you know, if the changes are valid and we have enough members who are interested in making those changes, we will certainly look at them. We have a priorities list that we go over every single month. And, you know, we may have to move things up. Like, for example, in March, we had to make a COVID form for everyone to use. So obviously that went to the top of the list. But if there's anything that you find that you're working with, or something, you know, over the years that you just had questions about, or you just said, you know, this form isn't quite right, please get in touch with me. That's why I got on the forms committee, because I have such terrible OCD. I couldn't stand working with some of the forms. So feel free to get in touch with me. All right.
Lynn, how do you get on the forms committee?
You petition the committee. So if you're interested, I'm the outgoing chair, and the incoming chair is Ryan Antrop. You can contact him directly, send him an email, let him know that you're interested. There are other folks who are interested too. So you submit your name. And you know what? I would suggest that you submit a little resume if you have one, or just, you know, a few facts about yourself.
Yeah, I know Ryan, so, okay,
Oh,
thank you.
yeah. So then just reach out to Ryan.
Thank you.
Yeah, he starts December. So our first meeting, if you want to get it to him to our first meeting, which is middle of the month, go ahead. And are you thinking for yourself, Pat?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you have a wealth of knowledge, and I know you'd be a good contributor to the committee.
Thank you.
So reach out,
Thank
definitely.
you.
Okay. All right. So no one else has been using it. I know, Pat, you taught a class on it. But let's just, Nicole, are you able to make that a little larger or no? Perfect. Well, not that large. Wait a minute. Okay. All right. That's good. Perfect. Oh, wait a minute. Come back. Just a little bit more. That's great. All right. So section 2 is where the changes begin. So the date of this agreement shall be the later of the date in which the buyer signs the agreement. So obviously we know that it's really the last person who signs the agreement. So if your seller signs last, the contract is activated the very next day. It's not the day of, because, you know, someone could sign a contract at 11:59, and, you know, that's just unfair to both parties. So it begins the date that the contract is delivered. We added that delivered because, you know, they may be holding the contract for a while, and how many of us have not received a contract for, you know, a week or two even. So you have to deliver it. And of course you have, you know, email or hand delivery, which we're not seeing a lot of that now, but it's the date that it starts the day after the date it's delivered. So keep that in mind when you're delivering contracts. Get them out as soon as possible. And just a note, even if you don't have the deposit, this is still a valid contract. It's the promise of consideration that makes this a valid contract, not the deposit. And you'll see when we move to the next section how important getting the deposit is. So for purposes of this contract, remember, the day after the date of this agreement is the first day. So dropping down to section 3.
Lynn, I have a question, and that was my big concern in that
Okay.
section.
Mhm.
Delivered.
Yeah.
So you have a contract, buyer signs it, you get it to the listing agent. Listing agent gets the seller to sign it on a Thursday, but does not deliver it to you till Friday.
So the
Which
date
day?
is Monday.
So seriously, it doesn't go by the signed date on the contract.
No,
It goes by the date that you get it, you receive it.
the day
Wow.
after the date you receive.
Okay. And that's for all purposes. That's for inspection purposes. And that's when you're doing any kind of addendum that says a date of the agreement,
Mhm.
it's the date you received it.
Right.
That's confusing, I think.
It
Okay,
is confusing, and that's why in section 2, we put that. For purposes of this contract and any reference to days, the day after the date of this agreement is the first day.
wow, okay.
And it's the delivery, because for how many years, Pat? You know, we'd be waiting for the contract, waiting for the
I know, well,
contract.
this is my problem. And so say somebody delivers it to you, okay? Say they put it in the mail because of COVID or whatever, right? And they don't do it email
Mhm.
and it's signed before that, but you don't receive it even for a couple of days. So now you're going by the date that you actually receive it. And how can you verify that?
Well, we're not doing a lot of snail mail these days, but some people do. And you could use the postmark date.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
I think that's going to be real confusing
I
in
know,
myself, you know,
I
because it's
know it is.
confused
I know
me.
it is. But,
Yeah.
you know, in this day of electronic signatures and things like that, we can get them delivered the same day or certainly the next day. There's no reason why we shouldn't be getting those contracts out, especially with all these multiple offers. You want to get your contract in, because as we all know, if you don't get it in and you don't get it signed,
I
someone
totally agree with you, but there are people, and you know who they are, that you
Mhm.
can't even sometimes get a call back,
Mhm.
and they will tell you everything's all set, it's all signed, but you don't physically get that by
Right,
email or anything. So now you have to be aware that the date you physically get it is the date you have to go by.
the next day. It's active the
Yeah,
next
the
day.
next day.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
And you
All
know.
right.
Does that mean we're gonna need a new receipt trail for like hand delivered?
Well,
what-
if you want to hand deliver it, there is a form in Instanet, receipt of the deposit. So you can use that too. And I encourage you guys to use that. And that's a whole other story. But to Pat's point, yeah, get them in, because as you know, someone could come along and say, hey, listen, I'm going to give you whatever, and it's 10,000 more than the original offer. If you haven't delivered that contract, it's like a can of paint. It's off the shelf. It's not, sold.
Even if it's signed, Lynn, if it's fully executed, but it hasn't been delivered, it can be null and void.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, you want to get that delivered.
Wow.
And again, that's why that was added. Okay. All
Mhm.
right. So do you see in blue in section 2? Where
Yes,
the datum
I
is
see it.
signed and delivers, okay?
Yeah.
And again, that would be a question for Monica too. If the contract was signed but not delivered.
Yep. Because that is going to happen.
Yeah, of course it's going to happen. Mhm. And you know what? It happens now,
Right.
so.
But I've always been trained to go by the date of last signature. And
Right.
I've always been trained that everything goes into effect the day after the last, the last signature date.
Mhm.
So this deliver to me kind of throws a wrench into it a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
all.
Yeah, but you guys, please get those delivered. Again, we all have access to electronic signatures and electronic delivery and email. And if your email goes down, or whatever, for any reason you're having technical difficulties, ask someone else to help you out with it. Get those contracts over as soon as you can.
Lynn, hasn't that always been a rule though? I mean, 20 years ago when I took real estate 101, I was taught that a contract's not a contract until it's in the hands of all parties.
Right, and we just firmed it up by adding that to the contract. And these are all things, and you're going to see as we move along, these are all things that so many of our members always wanted to see in the contract, but were never changed. And that's why this is a huge change for us, what we've done with this contract. And we've brought some things back too, B and Pat, you being older agents, that you'll see that we brought back that we found that, hey, you know what? We really need this. I don't know why we took it out in the first place.
Okay,
No.
Lynn, again, we are not older agents, is mature.
And very experienced, big.
Experience is acceptable.
Lynn, I agree. I think the changes are great. I'm just saying that. I'm not trying to be negative. It's
No,
just
I know.
this deliver is confusing to me, and I think people are gonna have issues with it. That's all. The
Yeah,
rest of the stuff I think is super.
Yeah, well, I'm just telling you guys, get those contracts delivered, no matter what, if you have to crawl there. I
And you
know,
know, can I add something to that?
Yes.
If you're going to send something to somebody, because like B, way back in the day, nothing was legitimate until it was delivered. If you're sending something to somebody, ask for acknowledgement that they received it.
yes, yes, always, always. Thanks, Joanne, always. All right, so any more questions on section 2? Okay, let's move down to 3. So we added a time is of the essence as it applies to section 3. Keep in mind, this entire contract is not time is of the essence. The only sections that are time is of the essence are section 3 and the inspection section, okay? It's not like Massachusetts where the contract is time is of the essence, or other states. Just these sections, okay? So time is of the essence as it applies, check mark yes or no. I'm guessing that most practitioners are going to check off yes. The only instance that I can think of where you would say no is maybe where someone needs to get funds out of their 401k to submit a deposit, or maybe a CD or something like that. But I would always check off time is of the essence, because I've had it happen to me this year. You know, I'm waiting for the deposit. It's not coming. Where is it? But keep in mind, again, like I said earlier, it's still a valid contract. However, because this is time is of the essence, the seller can say, you know what, you didn't deliver the deposit when you said you would. Sorry, all bets are off.
What
Keep
about
that
when
in
we
mind.
mail it?
I would never mail a deposit, only because the way the mail has been, and there's no guarantee. If you check off, if the listing agent checks off time is of the essence, there's no guarantee that the mail is going to get it there by that date.
Yeah, I know, but we mail them. I personally mail them a lot right now. So
Yeah, well, you know, a lot of companies have drop boxes, and if you, is this Joe?
yeah.
Hi, Joe.
Yep.
A lot of people are delivering them to be safe. If you don't feel right, use gloves or something like that, but you gotta get that deposit over, especially with these changes. It's really important. I wouldn't ever mail a deposit check simply because of the inconsistency with the mail. You know, does anyone else mail them?
I do. It depends on where it's going.
And I have
And-
too.
And
Yeah.
I'll be in touch with the listing agent if that's the case. And I've had agents that are like in Westerly and sell something of mine, and I can appreciate them not wanting to drive up the deposit, to do the deposit.
Mhm.
More and more often, I'm having buyers drop the checks off to the co-brokes.
Mhm.
And that's just waiting for confirmation that I received them. I mean, I just think that we have to be a little more flexible now.
Mhm.
You know, and it's communication. And to me, the bottom line is communication. You need to talk to the other agent, and what they want you to do, you've got to do.
Right, and you can send it certified mail,
Mhm.
because there's a guarantee that it's going to get there on the date that you specified in the contract. So see where it says deposits shall be paid and delivered, again, delivered to the escrow agent. Okay. And the additional deposit shall be paid and delivered. And again, if you're not giving a deposit initially, you know how we give that $100 check or that $500 check, if you're not giving it, you can just put 0 and then put that it'll be delivered, you know, at another time. And they should be paid by personal check, certified check, money order, wire transfer, and bank check. Someone asked on the panel if they could use Bitcoin as a deposit. I don't recommend it, but if that's what, you know, the two parties agree upon, this contract says that they should be delivered by personal check, certified money order, et cetera, wire transfer. And I wouldn't recommend bringing a big bag of cash either, because, you know, attorneys nowadays, they don't want that. And neither does our office. We don't want a big bag of cash. By the way, while we're talking about a big bag of cash, you guys all know that you can't commingle. So say someone does give you $100 bill. You can't come to the office with 250s. Does everybody know that? It has to be that exact bill that that person gave you. But again, I discourage it. And my preference is certified check. And if you're going to use a personal check, make sure you redact it so that, you know, the routing number and the account number don't show. You know, unfortunately, there's so many scammers out there. You have to be careful with everything, especially with funds. So anyway, moving along, final balance shall be paid again by those methods. Does anybody have, and be mindful too of wiring funds. Make sure you verify the source that's asking for funds to be wired. There are so many instances, especially with attorneys, where people have wired funds to a scammer and lost lots and lots of money. So be mindful of that as well.
So
All right.
Lynn,
Yes.
Lynn, this is the first time I'm looking at the this new agreement here with the
Who am I
purchases.
speaking with? I can't see your faces.
Yeah, this is Frank Danette.
Hi.
Hi. So it says time is of the essence as it applies to this section. We can check yes, we can select no. Is this just the price then at this section that we're able to renegotiate if it's not done within the time frame on the contract, or is it applying to the?
It's just the deposit.
So it's applying just to this specific section, just to the deposit.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
the only sections is this section and the inspection section. Okay. So again, you don't have to make it time is of the essence. You can say, you can check no, because like I said earlier, you're not sure if your client is able to cash out his or her CD by that day, or
Well, same thing applies. Like if you have like the check that's getting mailed, like something sent in the mail, I mean, that's something that you might want to put down as a no
Yeah,
for that
yeah,
reason.
you
So
could.
that's
You
what
could.
I'm going with.
Mhm, absolutely. All right, moving down. Any more questions on section 3? All right, let's move down to 4. Nicole, can you pull that? Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Okay, so buyer and seller agree that all deposits shall be held in an escrow account by the following escrow agent. This is something that we've added for the convenience. You know, some folks don't even have the deposits go to the listing brokerage. They have it go right to the attorney. Or in the case where there's a contractor, you know, sometimes the contractor holds the funds. Or this is especially good when there's a FSBO. If you're selling a FSBO, you know, this is really great to determine where the funds are going to be held. So it's probably 99% of the time going to be held at the listing brokerage, or we have provision for other escrow agent. And you would put their name, address, and email there. And all deposits shall be applied to the purchase price, except otherwise mutually agreed upon in writing. And the release of the deposits upon execution and delivery, again, of a written release to the escrow agent. And I just want to stop here for a minute. It doesn't have anything to do with the contract. Well, essentially it does. How many of you folks are having, and you know, I've been getting calls, but I don't know if you're getting any pushback, getting your deposits released or getting the release signed by a seller, either on your end or on the co-broke's end, where the seller just simply flat out refuses to sign. Anybody having that situation?
It has happened to me. It has
Mhm.
happened to me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And Pat, what do you do in that case?
It's a tough situation. You
Yes.
know, you got to look at the whole process. I mean, if it's a clear, I mean, again, these contracts are written so gray,
Mhm.
you know, that it's unfortunate that that does happen. And so you have to figure out how you're going, especially if, say, it depends on who you're representing. If you're representing a buyer and the buyer followed the contract and now needs a release and the seller won't sign it, you know, you have to try to negotiate, you know, you have to put a case forth of why the seller needs to sign it. But I've seen situations where, you know, they've just, that doesn't matter. Doesn't even matter sometimes if the buyer follows the rules.
Right. Yeah,
How
we've
get
had,
the attorneys involved?
Yeah,
I'll get the attorneys involved because sometimes I think they look at us and they think they can do what they want. And then
Yep.
you put them in touch or you refer attorneys to talk to, and the buyer's attorney talks to the seller's attorney. Usually it's a quick conversation and it gets resolved.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a couple in our office and it's very sad. You know, the client was perfectly within their rights. They followed, you know, and again, you have to be mindful of dates. You know, I know that your buyer is responsible, but you need to be mindful of the dates. If you have to, you know, put it in your phone or whatever, and I always do a couple of days ahead of time for the mortgage contingency or the inspections contingency or whatever. If you're getting close to the date, get that extension out. And what I'm seeing is, even though, you know, we had the extension properly signed by the buyer, the seller was just, well, you know, I'm not giving you your deposit because you held me up, or for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. So I encourage you guys to please educate your sellers that, you know, the buyer is within their rights as long as they keep to the date specified in the contract, and they have to return the deposit. We're holding it and there's nothing that we can do to release it. And I don't want to send deposits to the treasurer's office, because a lot of times those deposits are needed for the buyer to purchase another property. You know, some people are really tight with their finances and that's all that they have for a deposit. So it breaks my heart to have to send it to the treasurer's office. So please educate your sellers on that.
Question.
Yes.
So I had a situation as recently as this past week where, you know, we had negotiated the repair items, but not yet had a executed repair addendum signed.
Mhm.
So as a precaution, I sent a release the last night of my inspection contingency just to cover my butt, but we ended up getting the signed addendum anyway.
Mhm.
But is there any remedy to that in this new contract as far as me not having to send that release to cover my butt? You know what I mean?
No, who were you representing in the transaction?
This case, the buyer.
The buyer, okay, and you got, now why did you request a release? Because they didn't respond to your request for
Because
repair?
I didn't have an executed repair addendum, even though we had agreed upon the items.
Yeah,
and-
yeah,
You know
well,
what I mean?
you did the right thing, because, you know, if the person doesn't respond, whether it be for the repair addendum or the extension on the mortgage contingency or anything like that, you know, that's your next step, is to request it. And sometimes it puts a little fire under their feet and they get moving on it, you
Yeah, well,
know?
no, that's what happened. I mean, it didn't end up blowing up, but I had to do it, I
Yeah,
guess. to
yeah,
cover
no, that
them,
was good. No,
you know?
that's good. Yeah, you have to be so mindful, really, and always on top of those dates. And again, fortunately, the mortgage contingency is not time is of the essence. Can you imagine if the mortgage contingency was time is of the essence during, you know, in this climate with COVID and everything? Oh, and by the way, please use your COVID addenda. We need that. You know, you've got to protect your client. We had someone in the office, again, so sad. She was waiting on a extension, mortgage contingency. She got COVID and then lost her job and lost her deposit. There was nothing that we can do. Imagine having to make that phone call. You know, it's just sad. And I know a lot of you have a lot of clients, but you have to be mindful of those dates. Okay. All right. Closing time, date and place has stayed the same. Can anybody tell me, with the exception of Pat and B, why that date is there, 10 o'clock at the Office of Land Evidence Records? How about some of the new agents? By the way, this was changed, not this time, but last year we changed it to the Office of the Land Evidence Records in the municipality where the property is located. So anybody want to take a shot at it?
Yeah, I'll give it one. It used to say the Registry of Deeds.
Yep.
Rhode Island does not have a Registry of Deeds.
Right, right. Thank you, Steve. That is true, but there's a more detailed reason why. All right, Pat or B, go ahead. No? Okay. The reason for that is because you need a place to go. So you'll see further down where we talked about if the person doesn't show up for the closing, then this contract is null and void. They need a place to go to the closing. So if they don't show up, then one or the other party can be in default. But thanks for sharing that, Steve, and that is 100% correct why it was changed last year. All right, does everybody understand that? You need to have a place to go, right? Okay. Did I lose everyone? I can't see you. All I can see is the form.
I'm here.
Everybody still here? Okay,
Yep.
good. All right. So of course we know number 6 is the waiver. That didn't change. Now the mortgage contingency. How many of you request a letter from the lender saying that the person, has the commitment?
I do if it's my buyer. Yeah, I request from the lender.
I mean, that's been the standard. We've been getting commitment letters from the
Yeah,
lender.
commitment letter. Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Sorry to say to you listing agents, we cannot request a letter. In 2015, TRID changed all that. Because of the privacy of the buyer's financial information, we can no longer request a letter. However, the contract does say that we can contact the lender and say, how's things going? We're getting close to the contingency date. Is this person qualified? And not qualified, we hope they're already qualified. Have you provided a commitment to this person? No longer, and of course we get a lot of that from the more seasoned agents who are used to practicing like that, where you get the letter. No more letter, we took that out.
Lynn, you referred to a buyer's agent, or I said to a buyer's agent. Is that the same? Because now you're talking about the listing agent. If I'm representing the buyer, I can't ask to see a commitment letter from the lender.
The buyer's agent can,
Okay, that's what I think, and Jeff, I don't know who also answered, but I think that's what we're referring to. But we know, I mean, it's been a while since being a listing agent, you're not to get that letter. That's been going on for quite some time. Yeah.
Right. Since
that's not a new change.
Right. So to you newer agents, if a more seasoned agent says, I want the letter, feel free to just say, I'm sorry, but I cannot provide you with the letter due to TRID regulations. They're going to want it and they're going to badger you for it. But you need to tell them, if you have any concerns, feel free to contact the lender, because the contract does allow for that. But no longer letter. Even in the intent, the word letter was taken out. So no longer ask for letters, please. Okay. Any
But if
questions?
you're representing a buyer, you can ask for the letter.
You can ask for the letter,
Okay.
and ask the buyer.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it okay? Is it okay if the lender shares the letter with me? Because there's personal information on that, like, a divorce decree or a bankruptcy from, years past, or, credit information that not everyone wants to share, nor should they. So forget the letter. The letter no longer exists unless, as the buyer's agent, like Pat said, wants to share that with you.
Well, with that letter, the commitment letter, comes the contingencies of the commitment. So
Right.
it's important for the buyer's agent to have that letter.
Yes, yes. And again, get permission from the buyer to look at the letter, And by the way, I've had lenders who just haphazardly send the commitment letter out to the listing agent. You know what happens once you do that? Once you send a letter out to the listing agent, it's like, okay, we're done here. If they don't you know, if they don't qualify for the mortgage by the mortgage commitment date, it's too bad because you already sent me the letter saying, you know, they're committed. So please, you know, educate your lenders. A lot of lenders think they're doing a great service by sending the letter to the listing agent. That's just not so, because that puts the buyer in jeopardy.
So Lynn, can I ask you, if I'm a seller's agent, I can get the letter from the lender, but I
Yes.
don't forward that to the listing agent?
Never.
Never. Okay.
Never. Like I said, once you do it, all bets are off. It's like, okay, we got the letter. You know, it's just, and that's why we put, if you'll see section 7, buyer obtaining a written commitment and letter is taken out, issued by an institutional mortgage lender or mortgage broker. And we brought back, well, when we get there, I'll tell you. So again, it's at an initial rate. And when you're representing the buyer, I would never put prevailing or current or anything like that, especially right now. We don't know what's going to happen with the interest rates.
Oh.
At an initial rate not to exceed whatever percentage for a number of years and number of points. So again, how many people, and again, I want this to be interactive, you know, if whatever you do, you know, let's just talk about it. There's no, no one's gonna look unfavorably if you practice a certain way, you know. I just want to know so that we can all get on the same page.
I was told to put a prevailing rate.
Never. If you're
Okay.
representing a buyer, never. Never.
Okay.
Right?
I
None
never
of,
do either. I never
No.
do that.
no. You want,
Unfortunately, the mortgage people are not on board with this. I come across so many mortgage people that tell their buyers
Yep.
that and tell the agent that, and especially when I'm dealing with newer agents, they don't know any better. So they're listening to the mortgage person, which they should. And the
Yeah.
mortgage person is saying, put prevailing rent. Great.
Mhm.
Yeah. Gotta
Got-
be careful.
Don't ever do that because God forbid, the day, not to get political, of course, the day after the election, rates go up to 8%, 9%, and that makes a significant difference in the mortgage payment. So you might have somebody who's really, really tight in their mortgage. You put prevailing, and now you're past the mortgage contingency date. Now what do? The rates went up to 8% and you can't afford the mortgage, nor do you qualify. So always put a number in there. All right, and the buyer should know what that number is because hopefully they're getting, you know, locked into a rate. And the mortgage lender should know also what that rate's going to be. Put it up another couple of, just so that the listing agent feels at ease. Like I wouldn't put, you know, an initial rate not to exceed whatever, 3%. You know what I mean? That's going to scare away the seller. But put a number in there. All right. So buyers shall make, oh, here's something that we added. Oh, any questions on that, by the way, section A?
Hey, Lynn, yes, this is Jerome. Hey, I just
Hi,
wanted to
Jerome.
make sure,
How you
I'm a
doing?
new, good, how you doing? I
Good.
just wanted to make sure I'm clear. So again, we don't put current in that spot, right?
Never. If you're
Okay.
representing a buyer, never. Don't put current, don't put prevailing, put an actual percentage in there.
And so, and if, in order for us to get to percentage, is that something that we should get from
The lender.
the lender? Okay,
Yeah,
I just wanted to make
because-
confirmation on that.
Yeah, because the lender usually will lock in a rate for a buyer. So we want to make sure that, you know, we're protecting them, that should the rate go sky high, they can get out of the contract. And obviously before the mortgage contingency date.
Got it.
Do we
Okay.
say to do an amendment if we have some out there right now?
Mhm.
I don't know that I would bother.
I
If they've
know.
if they've already locked in or the lender's already processing everything, I don't know that it's that critical.
Okay.
And it might raise an eyebrow too.
When does
Okay.
this form go
Exactly.
into use? When is this supposed to be enacted?
It
Probably
already
now.
in use. It was revised 10/4/2020, and we were shocked that Instinet got it in so quickly. You know, I thought it was going to be the end of November, maybe early December, and no later than the end of the year. And they got it in like within weeks. So it's already active. If you go into Instanet or dot loop or even our platform, it should be there.
And the
Lynn,
mortgage rate, this isn't anything new, guys. This is always the
Right.
way you should have practiced. I
Right.
mean, years and years ago, we used to put market value, a market rate or prevailing rate, but we've learned. So when you're representing the buyer, you're always protecting them with a rate. And this isn't a change in the contract.
Right.
can I say one other thing?
Yeah,
To answer Jerome's question, let's say that you take an offer on the weekend, you don't know really what the rate is. You don't have to have a specific rate. But like right now, let's just say you might put no greater than 3.5%, because that makes sense based on what's going on in the market and a 30-year loan. So you can put a number in there. It's just like Lynn said, you don't want the rates to go up sky high next week for whatever reason, and you have prevailing. So at least if you have 3.5, they'll go up to 5, your buyer's protected.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And these are things that we take for granted, but the buyers have no idea,
Correct.
So we really have to educate them and make them understand why we're filling in these lines. All right, anyone else? Thanks, Jerome, for that question. Okay, so buyer's obligation. This is something that we added. Buyers shall make diligent efforts to apply for a mortgage and shall make formal application within blank number of days of this agreement. This is something that we brought back. And you more seasoned agents, don't you love this, that this is
Right.
back again?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Love it.
Yeah. So what this is saying is that your buyer is committed to applying for a mortgage within a certain number of days. Because before, when that wasn't there, buyers would just take their time and it was like, have you applied yet? What's going on? This and that. And the listing agent would call the lender and the lender would say, sorry, the buyer hasn't made formal application. And that slows everything down. And we don't need anything else to slow things down because, with COVID, and I hate to keep referring to COVID, but it's true. COVID has slowed a lot of things down and has changed the way that we practice. So the buyer shall make diligent efforts. That word was added to apply for a mortgage. So make sure that your buyer is doing everything that he or she is supposed to do to get that mortgage going. And we're going to see a little further down something about the appraisal. So they have to make an application. Sorry,
Lynn, can I ask you, is there a general rule of thumb of how many days to put on that?
They should be able to make, again, with the age of electronics, they should be able to make a formal application within 5 days, 3 to 5 days.
Okay.
There's no reason why they shouldn't. Because if you have a 30-day close,
Yep.
you're not going to make a 30-day close if you say that the buyer has 7 days or 10 days,
Yeah, exactly.
So you want to keep things moving along realistically. You don't want to say that they should apply for a mortgage within 1 day. 3 to 5 days I usually use. What do you guys use?
I would do the same thing. I mean, I just find out who the lender is and what I think and work from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree, Joanne. You're always calling the lender first. And I used to always put 7, but again, it depends on the situation.
Right. Certainly with certain programs. So if you have a program where you need not seller assisted, where you need closing cost assistance, you need to get them into with the lender, either electronically or however they're going to do it, closer to 3 days than 5 days, because we all
Yeah.
know that those programs take a long time.
And
And
here
when-
again, I would say you have to know your client, because if you have a buyer that is not electronically savvy, you might give them 5 days because they need to physically meet with the lender.
Yeah.
So again, all of this is fluid. You just have to look at the situation and decide based on who you're working with and who the parties are, what date you want to put in this.
Right. Now, I just want to tell you guys, it's coming on to 1 o'clock. Do you want to stay a little longer so I can continue with this? We've had quite a few questions. Do you want me to go on? Can you stay on, or if you have to leave, that's
Well,
okay?
Lynn, this is the last section, right? There's nothing else other than this.
Yeah, we got to go down just a little further, and I'll go through quickly, just to give you guys time, because I know we said it was going to be an hour. So,
I'd say go.
Okay.
Go,
Everybody,
go.
okay, so again, the last sentence of that section says, like we talked about earlier, buyer authorizes seller and or listing licensee to contact any such lender to confirm the status, including denials. So, you know, you may call a lender, unfortunately, and the lender says, I sent out a denial, but you weren't notified. And that could be a real horror show. So feel free to contact the lender if you're the listing agent. All right. Buyer fails to do so, buyer shall be in default and the seller shall have the right to the deposits. That's in section B also. Section C, inability to obtain financing. If buyer makes diligent efforts to apply for a mortgage and has not received a written commitment, please, please, please request an extension, not the day of, not at midnight, but like 2 to 3 days before. Because if the lender hasn't given a commitment today, for example, they're not going to have it tomorrow. Chances are they're not going to have it tomorrow. So always give a couple of days. If you're talking to them at 5 o'clock today, they're not going to have it tomorrow. And please, you know, you're walking on a ledge at that point. So always give a couple of days. I always put it in my date book or whatever, a few days ahead of time. And I'm sure most of you do that. So they made the diligent efforts. They haven't received a commitment letter. You request that mortgage contingency by written notice, right? You send something. If seller does not extend the mortgage contingency, buyer shall have the right to deposits. This is what we talked about earlier, that the sellers are resisting and refusing to give the deposit back. It's right here in, well, right now it's blue, blue and white. If the seller does not extend, buyer shall have the right to deposits. And you newer agents, please don't let anybody bully you. They have the right to those deposits. If buyer applies for a mortgage as described in that section and receives a denial, then upon notification of the denial to the seller and listing agent before the mortgage contingency deadline, or the, you know, if you have an extension, the agreement shall be declared null and void. And again, have their deposits. As long as you're following those dates, the buyer is safe. Because how many times do you hear a buyer say, now, wait a minute, if if this happens, do I still get my deposit? If that happens, do I still get my deposit? They need to feel safe that their deposit is protected. All right. So if section D, if on or before the mortgage contingency, buyer has not received a written commitment or fails to request an extension as stated in C above, the mortgage contingency shall be deemed waived. If buyer fails to purchase the property on the closing date, buyer shall be in default. Remember, we talked earlier about why there's a date in, for closing. This is why, because if they don't show up, they're in default. All right. Excuse me. Moving along to the next section, A, satisfaction. Can you blow that up just a little bit, Nicole?
This has all been crossed out.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to see.
Yeah.
Okay. All
It's
right.
replacing everything.
All right, keep going. Again, taxes, section 10, taxes, adjustments, and other assessments. For you more seasoned agents, we took out the initials over there. I don't know why they were ever needed over there, because we have the end of the page. So that was removed.
Great idea. You know how many times we have to go back and get initials because somebody forgets to put it in dot loop?
Exactly, exactly. And that's why we removed it. Just a note in section A, we just changed the word from towns to municipalities because we have towns and cities. Just a administrative change. Keep going. Oh, here's a good one. Section 13, we extended those lines and we increased the spacing in between, right? How many times do you send out a document and your buyer says, I can't press on it. I can't get it. I can't get it to initial. We've accommodated that section so that now it's a lot easier for them. All right, keep going. And again, section 16, we just changed deposits in accordance with section 4, which was previously 5, just again, an administrative change. And by the way, you see the lines, buyer's initials and seller's initials, we increase those lines too, because if you have 3 or 4 sellers, you want everybody to fit on those lines. We also made the additional provisions box and other boxes a little smaller. And I think if we move along, I think that's it. Yeah. Keep going, please. Yeah,
How about
that's all, folks.
Contract, that's something, does anybody know how to do that aspect of the contract if somebody wanted to have the contract assigned to another party?
I have, in 22 years, I have never had anyone assign one. Joanne, have you?
Never, never.
And I
Lots
have
of times,
never.
Like a wholesaler might do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right.
Somebody that's buying a house wholesale.
Yep.
Chances are they would. By the
Is-
way, you're going to see 4 lines for buyers and sellers. There is a form if you have, 5, 6, say you have an estate or whatever. There is a form in Instinet and of course on our platform as well, where it's called the additional signatures addendum or something like that. If you have 10 people, you can use that.
Lynn, I have a question.
Okay.
Can we go
Again,
back to the extension of the mortgage?
Yes.
And it talks about, let's see, I think Nicole's gonna bring it up, but it talks about giving an extension.
Yeah.
And it talks about it being null and void if the extension isn't signed. So do we not have to, this goes to Joe's question in the very beginning of this. Joe sent over a release of funds, which is what I would do,
Yes.
but it doesn't sound like that's what you need to do. Can you
It
put
does-
some clarity on that?
Yes, and you do have to send a release. Again, these contracts, if we had to put everything in there, like someone suggested at risk management that we have an explanation for every form. If we did that, we would be bogged down with so much paper. And you as an educator, Pat, you just have to let them know, the next step is a release. The next
Okay.
step is this, it's not
Well,
clear, but it refers.
If you
to the
remember
section.
years ago, Lynn,
Yeah.
giving that extension on its own pretty much protected the buyer's deposit years ago. And then it got to a point where no, if it didn't get signed by the seller, it's worth nothing.
You're talking about the extension to the mortgage contingency?
Yep.
All
No,
right.
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
You always need to use that extension, always. Never leave.
Right, but I mean, it was never a pertinent fact that it got signed by the seller. It was always a situation, not recently, I'm going back like 10 years ago, where if you did an extension and as long as you got that extension over and requested and the buyer signed it, you were protecting that buyer. And now that hasn't been like that in many years. I understand that. But when you read this contract, it doesn't make it really clear that, you have to request a release of funds.
Yeah. And again, that's just the next step. Like, as practitioners, we need to educate our buyers and tell them that's the next step. Now we have to do this. And there's also on the request for release, there's another form attached to that that says why you're requesting a release. And it was, seller failed to sign this or seller failed to sign that. And again, guys, there's a lot of forms out there that some of us aren't taking advantage of that they don't know exist. I was talking to someone in our office yesterday. He didn't know that a particular form existed, and he was so happy to find out that we have an actual form. So if you have a question or, you're in the middle of a transaction and you don't know something, pick up the phone, give me a call. I'm happy to, help you with anything. And I can also direct you to the forms. I'm just so used to working with them probably more often than you are. So like they say, there's an app for that. There may be a form for that. Any other questions? I'm happy to stay on. If anyone has questions at all, don't be afraid to ask a question. No question is silly. And every question has value, and it might have value to someone else who's on. So, that just didn't want to ask. So please
Lynn, I have another question. The phone call we had about the release of the contract.
Yes, how did that go?
Well, I just got it back signed Sunday.
Good.
So now, am I to assume that they are just going to release the escrow back to my client? I
Yeah,
did
they-
follow up with the admin, with the seller's agent's admin to,
You could, but they have 10 days to release it.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad that worked out for you, Lauren.
Oh my God, you and me both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question?
Hi, Craig.
Hi. Back in section 7, we kind of skipped over, you were going to mention it, but then you kind of skipped over about the appraisal time,
About the what, please?
about requesting an appraisal.
Oh, yes, yes, very important. Okay. So,
The lender doesn't want to do it until after the inspection.
the inspection, right. So you want to put a day in there. Now, that is not, time is of the essence there. Excuse me, that is not, that's calendar days. So be mindful, if you're going to do that, you're going to say 3 days and it's a Friday. Well, some lenders don't work Saturdays and Sundays. So you want to give your client enough time to do that, because you want, especially in a 30-day closing, you want to get things moving along. And if they're waiting until after the inspection, so because the inspection is business days, you have up to 14 days to do the inspection. Again, like I was saying earlier, you're never going to make a 30-day close,
Right, but
because the inspectors have 2 weeks also to get it in. So there's your 30 days right there.
right, but sometimes the lenders don't want to do the appraisal until after the inspections are done.
As long as your client is willing to give authorization to the lender, you can say to the lender, hey, I
Sure.
haven't received, where's the appraiser? And again, I understand that they're trying to make their client save some money and look like a hero. However, we want to get these transactions pushed through, and paying whatever, 500, 550, whatever the cost is part of the transaction, and it makes you a better buyer. So we need to educate our buyers and say, hey, listen, you need to authorize the appraiser. You might have to pay $500, but it's going to move it along. And
Yeah.
excuse me, you can tell the listing agent, hey, Pat, I got a great buyer, and they understand that they got to get that appraiser out right away, and they're willing to get it out either, during the inspection or, whatever, at the onset of the application. So, this buyer is great and is, willing to move. And there are so many aspects of the contract that you can talk about to a listing agent that make your client a better buyer, and certainly educate your buyer on those aspects, because, you can say, hey, listen, some buyer's agent will do this and some buyers will do that, but my client is willing to do that. So again, that makes your buyer a much better buyer if they're willing to move ahead. Hey, if they have to spend the money, I mean, that's all part of it.
It's good faith that they're entering into the
Yes.
contract, and I absolutely love that this is put in.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I like that it's there too. I just was trying to get maybe some ideas of what.
I
kind
think
of a
we're going to
time
see a
frame.
lot of 16 days in there, 14 days, 16 days.
Right.
But again, like Lynn said, that's going to make a difference if you've got multiple offers, for sure.
Right. Like Pat would say to me, Lynn, why are you saying 14 days for the inspection? And Pat, knowing and understanding the process, you get a seasoned agent who understands the process, is going to say to the seller, hey, listen, I think this person's dragging their feet. I would go with the other person because they're willing to move it along. Because don't forget, we tried to balance out this contract. Sellers have rights and sellers need to move along too. They may have a property that they're going to, and we can't always inconvenience them, and we're all looking for the same thing, heading for the same goal.
Lynn, let me ask you, so we can ask the lender to give us we can request from the lender that we want the appraisal done within the first 15 days or 16?
No, what we're doing is we're giving the buyer is authorizing the lender to do, so I say to Pat, all right, my client is authorizing the lender to do this within 3 days. So if the lender says, hey, I'm not going to do it until after the inspection, you can say to the lender and the buyer, listen, the terms of the agreement is that they're authorizing the appraisal to go out. And you say to your buyer, do you understand that you may pay $500 or whatever the cost is, and you may find something at home inspection and you're not happy. However, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, it makes you a better buyer, because let's face it, most people are sending offers on a purchase and sales agreement. They're not using the intent anymore, right? I mean, most of you are, right? Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. I hope all of you are, but keep in mind, if you send it over on a P&S and the seller signs, it's a binding contract. So you got to be mindful. With multiple offers, I would always suggest sending it on a P&S. Never the intent, unless the terms are just phenomenal.
I never use an intent.
Mhm. So any other questions?
So I get the form on internet, that's the latest and greatest? When I download this, I'm downloading?
Yes, it's on there, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. This is the latest, maybe not the greatest, but that's why we need feedback from our members. I mean, as far as this is going to stay for a while. There are other things, when things come up that we need to change on the P&S because the law has changed or whatever, of course we have to change it. But right now, this is your P&S for a while. And are there any other forms that you guys have been working with that you say, can you explain this, or what about that? Or, have you thought of changing this? Or just your pet peeve? Like my pet peeve was in the disclosure, the lines were too small, or, even if it's an administrative change, something that you find difficult to work with. All right, we'll write them down. And again, if you have any questions at all, I'm willing to.
Lynn, you did such a great job with this form, and I actually would like to see you do some form classes on all the forms.
Sure, I'm happy to. Happy to. Is there a form that anyone is having difficulty working with and would like further explanation on? No? Okay, good. All right. Again, you guys all have my cell phone number. If you need anything at all, let me just check the chat. There might be a question. Okay. Steve, we'll have to talk about this over coffee. I got yours about Zillow. Oh my gosh. Wait, I can't hear you. You're muted.
If they're
I
gonna
think
be
you should do a
licensed in Rhode
class
Island,
on it.
if Zillow's going to be licensed in Rhode Island, then they should have to follow the same damn rules that you and I have to follow.
Yeah, they do. If they're going in MLS.
Yes. So the MLS rule says you do not cross that line.
Yes. Yes.
And it pisses me off when I hear from people, oh, well, Zillow said that I'd get a discount if I stopped working with you.
Yeah.
And I explain them the dangers of all that. But, there's many people that see that and say, oh, I'm going to save a few dollars. Bing, let's do that.
Right.
Absolutely.
As of Friday, because I asked the same question. As of Friday, they do have to follow all our MLS rules. They have to. That's going to be interesting, very interesting.
It will be.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess they're doing kind of the same thing like that other company did when they came on. They weren't really realtors. You remember?
Renton?
No,
We can't say the name.
Say it. Just like we can't talk about commission. By the way, guys, for those newer agents, when you're with your peers, you can't talk about commissions. And always refer to them as apples or oranges or tomatoes or whatever. All right. So I hope this information was helpful. Again, any other questions? You have my cell phone number. Feel free to call me. And again, like I always say, if you think you're in trouble, call me when you're ankle deep, even knee deep. Waist deep, I might be able to get you out, but when you're up to here, there's no guarantee. All right, guys. You
Happy
have a
Thanksgiving, Lynn.
happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. All right. We'll see
Thanks,
you.
Thank you.
Stay safe and well.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah,
you.
bye-bye. Nicole, thank you for doing this for us. Nicole, I hope you're still on. Are you on?
Sorry, Lynn, I was on a phone call with an
No, no, no,
agent, but
that's
I'm
okay. I
on.
just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this for us. We
Oh,
really,
no problem. Thank you.
you're a whiz, and you have a happy Thanksgiving. To tell your aunt,
You
I said
too.
happy Thanksgiving.
I will. I'll tell her. Thank you.
All right, great. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.